Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of Point Edward Village Council on October the 8th, and it's 5:30. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. Is there anyone with pecuniary interest?
None here.
As always, if it comes up later, you can just speak up. Thank you. And under new business, Louisa Street, traffic calming measures.
Before we do this one, I'm wondering, can we add St. Clair and Alexander to this discussion? Do we need to do any approval for that? Because that was in the redesign, right?
That's already like to turn it to a four-way stop.
Yeah,
That's part of the construction project.
That's already
It's
approved?
incorporated.
okay.
Yeah. So this discussion is based on where Mike is working with Lydia. Yeah, no, Lydia's right. I get Paula and Lydia
Yeah.
mixed up and confused sometimes. Working with Lydia from MIG to come up with a line painting plan for Louisa Street and with the realignment of the intersection at Helena. So the paradigm report calls for parking lanes on each side of the road and then a center line up the middle. And the idea is that it will provide traffic calming the same way that the line painting we did on Michigan Ave has slowed down traffic and seems to make the street narrower and such. So what we need to decide is if we want to put any stop signs anywhere on Louisa Street. One of the options that's mentioned in the paradigm report as an alternative is a four-way stop at Charles and Louisa. And then there's some discussion about changing patterns all over, like all over that zone of the village. And so there's no concrete recommendation from the report. It's basically saying you can do a few things. And so we're wondering where council would like to go with this. I think our recommendation is just to do the line painting, and put realign the intersection of Helena and Louisa and do the line painting and see where that takes us. So we're just looking for some direction from council on that.
I'm misunderstanding because I thought the decision had already been made to put a four-way stop in at Charles. So I'm not remembering it properly then.
No, there is,
Back when we
No.
talked about it? No.
there's, as I say, there's a recommendation, there's
Okay.
a discussion in the report. I can bring that up fairly easily.
It's okay. I thought that at that time we had decided that we would do that.
That was my recollection. I remember we discussed it and no motion was made,
Okay.
but we all talked about it and thought it was a good idea, but I don't think we ever made a motion to do it.
So on the other hand, then perhaps what you're suggesting is that do all the painting, do all the change, and then evaluate the next step if we would go to a four-way stop.
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, part of the discussion I do recall at the time was that it'll be a little bit better if we're going to put a stop sign in, it's better to do it now, do it all at the same time.
Yes, with the line painting and everything.
Yeah, because you have to change things around a little bit to put a stop sign in, so that's why this discussion's coming up now.
Is Mike here to answer some questions on this?
Yep,
Because one of the, through you to Mike, your hand is one of the things that comes up a lot is you throw that stop sign in there and it moves all the traffic over to the next street often. And what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's yes, Mayor, I do agree. According to the report, there were a number of different options that came about. If we change any one of those sections in terms of the two-way stop, four-way stop, it will completely change all the traffic patterns within the village at that point. Right now, the way it's designed, there are two through ways that travel north and south, and there are no egresses that travel completely from Front Street all the way through. There are stop signs along that way. If we did end up adding stop signs at Charter at Louisa, that would absolutely stop all throughway going along the way. Now, from looking at the speed data that we're looking on Front Street, and there has been a change on the recent, details. I was speaking to CAO, and the idea is if we can continue the traffic calming, it will reduce the lanes by about 1.8 meters on each side, really condensing those lanes, hopefully creating a slower speed at that point. The other option was to look at traffic camera down that space to make sure that we're making the right decision before we actually try to change all those traffic patterns.
And then what are your, what are your thoughts on the use of the bollards? We used them on St. Clair with mixed reviews. I thought they were very successful. Some residents didn't, but
Again, in the plan, there are a number of different options. I don't recall bollards being one in this particular.
no, it's
Second.
not, no.
It would be possible, and not being an engineer, I don't really have an answer for that specific.
And I think bollards is something we could probably add in. That is something that could be added in later. That's, I mean, that's not gonna affect your painting pattern.
No, just throw it down the yellows. Yeah.
So,
Through the narrative, in the report here, it says there was two options. One was Louisa Street, a four-way, and then we're talking about moving traffic over, and then also it was Arthur Street, a four-way.
Mhm,
To create an alley for children going to school.
mhm.
So I know there's, they're both through streets,
Mhm.
but I think it was, part of it was the safety aspect for children crossing the street as well. The traffic is a little, based on the numbers, there was some over the limit there, so it would just on both streets.
Again, through the mayor, I do agree, looking at the study, and if we look at the map here, by changing a number of those streets, if we did end up changing so that Charles was a complete throughway, or as you mentioned, the four-way stop, you're gonna have a lot of, there will be a lot more traffic congestion in that space. Not that there's a great deal of traffic that goes on side streets, but it is an option, I guess. It's
Just on that, follow-up, my concern if we Arthur's pretty narrow street, and there's a lot of parked cars and all that on that street, and I'm concerned if we channel traffic to that street, we're gonna have issues. Because it's similar to Helena. Helena is a narrow street, and we try to go down there, and there are cars on both sides, and it's like basically a single lane. So that slows cars down, but it just causes more congestion, so I don't know.
And if I may follow up on that, we're gonna be changing the configuration of Louise and Helena to be a 90-degree turn. Arthur is even a wider
Yes,
slope, and I think that has to fall into a future capital to be fixed, because I think if we make Louisa now a 90-degree turn, people will just scoot down to Arthur and make that wide sweeping turn. So I think we're just moving a problem over. And if we leave both streets wide open, I think we run the risk of Arthur becoming the next raceway.
and we're all sort of follow up, we're already doing that on St. Clair. Like
Mhm.
with Albert and Charles, right? We're gonna,
Yes, it's also going that way.
we're slowing those down by taking the angle out.
Yep.
Making them a perpendicular, whatever they are. So, I don't know.
Paul, did you?
Yeah, I like the four-way stops. We put them in front of Bridgeview School. My kids were playing in the kindergarten yard and we watched cars just go flying down there through both those intersections at Charles and Alexandra. And since those four ways have gone up, it's reduced the amount of traffic because people avoid it. They'll stay on St. Clair Street and it's slowed traffic down quite a bit. So I think if we put a four-way at Louisa and Charles, we should put a four-way at Arthur as well. I don't think there's any question, because everybody's right that it's like water, it'll find the path of least resistance, whoever can get through the village quicker. And especially when Councillor Mondu brought up kids walking down Charles to go to school, those are two pretty regular crosswalks. I think that's a pretty simple solution. I don't want to oversimplify it. I know there's more to it, but I like the four ways.
Just a comment on that too, it forces traffic in front in St. Clair.
Mm.
And there are bigger arterial roads, right? It keeps it out of the residential from people cutting through all the time, so. I know, you know, if it's slow residents down, but people do use it as a cut. Right? So,
I don't know, they're just so close together. So you've got from Louisa to Arthur, just, and then stop again. There's only like a couple of houses. Just if it makes a really short block, but whatever, everybody wants it.
If we approve these two, what's your process in implementing the change to the stops? Is there what the act calls for?
I would have to look into that if I would necessarily move forward.
One thing we'd have to do is change our bylaw, like
Mhm.
our bylaws specifies every intersection where there's a stop sign in it, so I'd have to go through and it would say. It says front at Michigan northbound, whatever, you know, it's all very clearly laid out, so. That's the first thing we'd have to do is add those signs to the bylaw and then make it effective on a certain date.
And I think
And then as far as notification to the public, we could find out what the proper.
when we did the school, there were signs put at those intersections saying effective this date, this intersection will become a four-way stop. And they were like a white
It
sign.
was like notice of a change.
Yeah, at the
and
intersection.
there was a new sign put up as well.
Yeah, the new,
To let
yeah.
people know that it's
Yeah.
now.
So the follow-up question, something I've been asking for a while is, then would you paint proper stop bars, proper crosswalks like I've
We
been
would
asking?
follow, yeah, we would follow the traffic requirements for that point, with the paint those, or I know in some cases along these that are existing, that have faded at that point, we would find out what the latest regulation would require, and we would paint them for it.
And that's part of the reason we're having this conversation tonight is because Lydia is working on putting together her layout of the painting on Louisa Street, so she needs to know are we gonna have stop signs or not.
So we're making a decision tonight so that we can feed back to her.
Mhm.
Ideally,
Yeah, okay.
so I think what I'm hearing is four-way stops at Charles and Louisa and Charles and Arthur. That,
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I like that. So it creates a corridor down. To the school from that. On Charles.
Yeah, I'll make that motion if we need a motion.
Yes, please.
I can second that.
Mhm. You know, read it.
yep,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll get that fine wording tomorrow, but
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? Yes, carried, thank you.
fine.
Number 5 is this bylaw, regarding our Canada Community Building Fund grant, formerly the gas tax. So this is just,
Yeah, this is just a standard bylaw that authorizes the mayor and I to sign the agreement.
And this is to get the gas tax money.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah, it used to be called the gas tax money, yeah.
that was the simpler term.
Hmm.
I can make that motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Second by Paul, all in favor? Okay, that's done.
I'll move that we adjourn to an in-camera session,
Second that.
5:46.
And we won't be coming back on live. We pull out.